All right, boys and girls, this week we are going to commence our investigation of Kotlin. What is Kotlin, I hear you asking? Thank you for the question. Kotlin is a programming language which is a superset of Java. And I believe you've all had Java in your instructional program. So basically, they say that Kotlin is what Java would be if Java were written today with our knowledge, because Java came out, what, in 93 or something, 92, 93. So we have about 30 years of experience roughly writing object oriented programming with Java. And I think Kotlin's actually been around for about 10 years or so. So, anyway, it sort of took the lessons learned of what Java could have done better and it rolled them into the language. So the first thing we're going to do right now, well, on day one of your class, which is tomorrow, you're going to start by installing IntelliJ, and you're going to see how you can use IntelliJ as your IDE for Kotlin. I don't really totally agree with that approach. I think when you're starting to learn a new language, when I teach Java, for example, I don't let these first term students use any type of an IDE. I only let them use Notepad and the command line. Because if you start by learning a fancy schmancy IDE, integrated development environment, then your brain is going to make confusion between what is core language elements and what is stuff that the IDE is doing for you. So in that light, I'm going to give you this little enrichment lesson today. It's not officially part of your class, but I believe it'll help you get more insight when you start up tomorrow with IntelliJ. We are going to write some simple Kotlin programs just at the command line, just using a text editor. So if you'd like, pour yourself a drink, a cup of your favorite drink, get some good hot chocolate, hot coffee, whatever you like, and let's get to work. Now, all of your links will be in this lab book that I'm sending out. So let's go right here. Let's start by seeing what the official Kotlin documentation site has to say on this subject. And I advise you becoming pretty familiar with this documentation site, right? A lot of cool stuff here. You don't really need a textbook in this course because JetBrains, which is the company behind this, has made a very high level of investment in giving you all this free documentation. So let's go and see now. So running Kotlin at the command line. So every Kotlin release ships with a standalone version of the compiler. And in fact, if you use IntelliJ, the only thing IntelliJ is some perspectives, right? Some editors and perspectives, which give you some code support, and then it just compiles it using the Kotlin compiler. Now, the IntelliJ IDE is great if you're writing very complicated codes. It gives you support for things like code archaeology. You can click on a method and see all the other places where that method is referenced or where it was defined. You can create, it'll do some UML for you, right? You can dump in some code and it'll generate object interaction diagrams and class interaction diagrams. But if you're just starting from the beginning to write a couple of simple programs, my suggestion would be just sort of park all that stuff aside for the beginning and join me here. So first thing we need to do now is get the compiler. So join me now and let's do that. And once again, your notebook steps you through this. So we're going to go to GitHub releases. And I just got this one right here. I think the one that seems to work okay for me is right there. Right, Kotlin compiler appears to be the latest one 3 weeks ago. So let's download that zip file. And I just made a directory here called Kotlin to work in. Now let's go and unzip. Now here's your Kotlin compiler, and we're going to go more into the mechanics of that later. But those of you, and I know from previous classes, some of you are quite intent, right? You want to go down to the metal and really find out how things work. And the very best way you can do that is by studying the source code. So you see these here are jar files. And a jar file is just a zip file. It's a Java archive resource file. It is just a zip file, and we put Java because Kotlin is Java, plus a couple of supersets. So I'll make a little example of something you can do here if you want to dig more into the source code. I don't want to mess up this jar file because I'm going to need this for my Kotlin environment, but I'll make another directory and I'll just show you something here. So I'll call it Area 51. Those of you, that's a commonly used reference in programming. Area 51, they say, is where the alien spaceships are stored, which is actually nonsense. That's just an urban myth. They're actually at the Peterson Air Force Base in Arizona, but that's another story. So for right now, Area 51 is a common name for a directory if you just want to play around with some stuff. So let's dump one of our jar files, which is from our library, which is from our Kotlin compiler. So I'm just going to copy this over to here. And now I'm going to rename it to .zip, which I don't really know how to do that in the Graphical Explorer, so I'll open a command line. So we'll say rename star.jar to star.zip. And the reason for doing this is to just conveniently be able to unzip it with our WinZip unzipping tool. All right, so I'll go back to here. And this is just to prove to you that that Kotlin is Java. Now there are tools. You can actually do this in Visual Studio Code. I'll demonstrate that another time. But you can actually go and you can decompile class files in Java to see the original source code. You can do that in Visual Studio Code. There's a plugin. However, if you want to see the source code, you can go and study the source code directly right there in the appropriate GitHub. So once again, not going to get into that right now. However, that's quite easy to do if that's something you want to see. Anyway, let's carry on with our example now of making a simple Kotlin program and compiling it directly at the command line. So where we got to in our adventure is we downloaded the Kotlin compiler, we dumped it into some directory, we took the bin directory and put it in our class path. Sorry, not in our class path, in our just our path variable for operating system. So you dumped it in there. And now we're going to follow the instructions from the Kotlin documentation site. Right, so let's go back to here. So all we're going to do is this. So we're going to make a simple program, and in a couple of minutes, I'll show you some slightly more complicated programs. But this basically is where it begins with. Whether you're working in IntelliJ or you're going at old school, like we used to back in the day with a simple text editor in the command line, you have to have function, main, and that is like your public static void main in Java. That's what kicks the soccer ball and gets it going. So a more completely sophisticated Kotlin program, just like Java, you write classes, right? You never put too much, you never put more than the minimum in your point of calling, which is the main function. All you do is instantiate other classes and run the methods on them. So let's dump this in text editor. I like Sublime, it's free. It's a good, strong programmer editor. If you like something else, go for it. So let's give that some name. And go and open a command prompt and change to your appropriate directory. There we are. Now I've already put my compiler in my class path, so I can run. Sorry, in my not my class path. Class path is where you put Java jar files. This is just my operating system path variable, right? So any program which is in a directory referenced in the path, you can run from any other directory. And then we just go and run this command as so. So we run our Kotlin compiler, and then whatever's the name of your program, and then we just put that variable in there, right? That tells the Kotlin compiler to go to that library directory we saw before and get the appropriate jar files for the Kotlin runtime, just like you have a Java runtime. In our next class, we're going to see the not Android Studio. We're going to see the Android runtime. Now we're getting the Kotlin runtime, and then you put that directive there, that flag, which directs your compiler to output, and then we can go and open the jar file later and see what's there as well. So let's go and grab that. It's now, whoops. Oh yeah, I think because I did not call my file hello, I called it first program. All right, let's go and fix that. So now I have my stuff there, which is hello.jar. So now let's go and run our program. And again, we're running it out of the source of hello.jar. We like using jar files for web applications because instead of passing potentially hundreds of class files around, we can just pass that one jar file around. Maybe you're making something with web services and you're passing it around between API endpoints or something. Right? All the stuff we learned about in full stack is going to come back. Now we're going to build on it and start using it for more sophisticated stuff. So now we run it. See, there's more instructions. You can go and read. The include runtime option makes the resulting jar file self-contained and runnable by including the Kotlin runtime library in it. Now we're going to run it. So you need to have, of course, JDK, Java standard JDK. I guess you have that. If you're not sure, just ping me on Slack. I'll give you an instruction on how to get that going. So we're saying Java run from a jar, which in this case is hello.jar. Now, again, this is kind of an enrichment topic. You don't have to do this, but if your goal is to get the job and get somebody to pay you money to do this, I believe you need to invest in yourself and your own conceptual thinking. And I'm telling you, this is a very good exercise to do. So anyway, this is going to give you a little bit more insight now into what's going on, and there's our program running. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video now. I'll kick out another one as well, doing some slightly more sophisticated Kotlin stuff. However, let's just go and see what's in our jar file. Just, I don't know, because I like to do this stuff. I don't know, I do like this stuff. I think you should make it a part of your practice as a programmer to really go down the stack and see where things are coming from. All right, let's go to our... There it is. Yeah, you see, I don't really know a convenient way to if anybody knows, let me know. I don't know a convenient way to change extension in the graphical front end, so just dump back to the command line to do that. So now it's unzipping it into a directory called hello. And there is your class with your code. And there's your Kotlin runtime. So anyway, try doing this yourself a couple of times and then come back. There will be another video out in a couple of minutes, which will just step you through the basic foundations of every programming language. You should know this by now. A programming language is variables and flow of control. Variables can be primitives or other objects. Flow of control, if, statements, loops, looping over collections, and that's about it. It's not that complicated once you have a good framework to think of it in terms of.